I've clicked onto the global tropical overview for August the 29th, 2023, 30th in the Philippines. As I always state at the beginning of these videos, the thoughts expression are just mine. I always give a big picture of things and just give you all the overall picture of what's happening with these storms, and I cannot get down to any local level that your local emergency management and local weather office can. So if you're ahead of Super Typhoon Saola or Hurricane Idalia, look towards them for preparations and what you should do ahead of the storm. I'm going to be giving a big picture of these as they traverse through the West Pacific for Saola and the Gulf of Mexico in Idalia. So here is Super Typhoon Saola. It is now north of Luzon, passing through the Luzon Straits, and unfortunately, the system intensified very significantly last night. Remember, yesterday we talked about it was in the middle of an eyewall replacement cycle, and now here we are. It has finished that eyewall replacement cycle, and now we have gotten an extreme super typhoon with winds likely near the, it's at super typhoon intensity, but on terms of Saffir-Simpson scale, on the upper end there of Category 4, probably Category 5 from what I see, though it looks like it might be peaking out now, just based on some infrared trends. Now, the system has been, regardless of, what's doing right now, it's been tracking through the Luzon Straits, and we have seen the eye wall, the north and south eye wall, come through some of the islands in the Luzon Strait, and you can see that here. You can see the eye wall, the northern eye wall, still battering some of these islands north of the storm, and you can see south of the eye. The eye wall is now moving away from this island here. I think it's I need to look at the map. The Babuan Islands. I think this is one of those islands, the northernmost one. I apologize if I mispronounced that. My geography here is not the best, but you can see again that eye wall is now moving away from there, and in a few hours, this eye wall will start to move away from these islands here, and we will start to have things clear up. That's the good news here with Saola. It's not like Doksuri, like what it did here in northwestern Luzon. It's not just going to sit around. It is moving westwards, so by, say, later today, conditions should start to improve considerably, though unfortunately the damage is likely already done with what is likely, a top-end super typhoon and likely extreme storm surge that typically comes with these storms. Now you can see the signal warnings here, signal 5 in place and signal 4 surrounding that for some of the Luzon Strait Islands here, and that's naturally in place. And you can also see just how expansive the wind field would be with this typhoon. You can see signal 2 and signal 3 warnings in place for northern Luzon, and you can see in the forecast cone there's a significant expanse of those wind radii, and you can see the tropical storm force wind field here is stretching pretty far into Luzon, and you can also see how far this extends northward, and you can see that, like I talked about a couple days ago, even if this system is coming south, which it is now coming south of Taiwan, you're still going to get some significant wind impacts, and even, like I said, that onshore flow into that high terrain, that can lead to a lot of flooding issues. Now, the system is going to come west and into the South China Sea, and we are forecasting some weakening here, mainly because there will be some downsloping from the mountainous terrain from Taiwan that will allow some dry air to potentially get entrained to the system. Alongside that, there might be some increased shear from an upper trough digging into China. Now, that upper trough is going to bring, some shear, but it's not going to pick up the storm. We're rather going to have a ridge in the upper levels build, and this is going to push the storm offshore and likely keep it just onshore or just offshore. And you can see that in the forecast track there. Though keep in mind, it could easily, trend a little bit north and could come ashore. It could also, take this track and you could have significant typhoon force winds along the coastline. Now I'm going to show you the GFS model. This is a 250 millibar flow chart, and you can see the general flow steering the system westwards. So you can see a ridge up here north of Taiwan. This is keeping the system going west. And as we go in time, you can see that upper trough dig in over China. And you can see that bringing perhaps some increased shear onto the system. And that may allow some weakening to take place. And you can see then the trough lifts out, and we have this ridge here build back in, and we get this general track just offshore of China. Now, of course, like I said, you can still get this coming onshore, and even if it does stay offshore, significant impacts are still likely. And you can see eventually that system just comes into Hainan at a later time. But it looks like at this point, the ridge does get to a point where it starts to lift the storm northwards. And exactly where that happens is key for the final landfall spot of Saola. Right now, the 5-day forecast has it coming just southwest of Hong Kong, but keep in mind here, things can change. This will change. This is very subject to changes. And if you're in really Hong Kong and around the coastline of China surrounding Hong Kong, make sure you stay tuned to your local weather office and the Japan Meteorological Agency. I'll again have links to all the local weather offices and the Japan Meteorological Agency for the West Pacific in the description below, and the Atlantic as well. Now that is Super Typhoon Saola. Let's go to the Atlantic, as boy do we have a lot to discuss today. This is Hurricane Idalia. The system had struggled to become a hurricane. It looked like it did from recon data yesterday, but I think what really happened is recon just couldn't find the strongest winds because of restrictions with the Cuban airspace. But since the system has lifted, we've seen the eye close off. We had the eye wall close off, and I can actually show you radar out of Key West. I'll show you that here. Let me transition the screen. This is radar out of Key West, and you can see there's the eye and eye wall. Now, this is super high up. This is about as far as the radar will go, but we still do get a general good idea of what the internal structure is, and this is a pretty well-developed eye, at least from what we see here. And recon will be flying in just after this video, and we'll see exactly what they find. But right now, the current estimate is about 90 miles per hour of this storm. That's a high-end Category 1, nearly Category 2. I wouldn't be surprised if recon went in there, though, to find a Category 2 hurricane. Notice as well, it might be difficult to pick out, but I've got some place files here, and you can see some of the lightning strikes that have taken place in the northern side of this eye wall. That can also be indicative of some intensification that is occurring within that eye wall. Now I'm going to go back to the satellite view, and something to notice is that now, the eye wall has all these cold cloud tops now surrounding it. Earlier today, we had the coldest cloud tops still on the southern side, but over the day today, these have wrapped around onto the northern side, and it's likely that eye wall is now becoming more formidable, and we may be about to see a phase of quick to rapid intensification. You can see all these convective bursts happening over that eye, and you can see one feature that we've been talking about over the past several days is this strong jet streak that is opening up a good poleward outflow channel. And I can show you this on the SBC mesoscale analysis. This is a 300 millibar flow, and you can see here's your trough over portions of the southern United States, and ahead of that you have this expanse of strong winds, and this is helping, here's the hurricane down here, enhance the poleward outflow, and you can see that very well on the water vapor loop. Here's your trough, and here's your expanse of the outflow, and this is exactly what models had anticipated, and unfortunately, given this environment and given what we're seeing on satellite and on radar and with recon data earlier, it looks like we are setting the stage for rapid intensification. And that intensification, assuming an eye wall replacement cycle doesn't take place, and that is extremely hard to predict, we are likely to see that rapid intensification continue through all the way up to landfall. And it is absolutely possible that we have this system get to, Category 3 high end at that. In fact, it's likely that happens, and it could get to Category 4. The hurricane models have been pretty consistent on showing high end Cat 3, low end Cat 4. But of course, keep in mind, no matter what this comes in, 125, 130 miles per hour, even if this manages to come in at 150, it does not matter at all. This system at a point when you get in the upper echelons of Category 3 and Category 4, it does not matter how strong the winds are. They're very destructive, and they will bring extreme storm surge here. And the storm surge forecast has been upped, unfortunately, with the uptick in the intensity forecast. The National Hurricane Center forecast 125 miles per hour, and you can see A potentially catastrophic storm surge event is going to unfold here over the Big Bend region of Florida. And if you're watching from the Big Bend of Florida, and you're sitting there and you're thinking that you can ride out the storm along the coastline, just don't think about it. Take this time. As I'm recording this video, it's about 4 o'clock Eastern time. This video will probably come out about 5. You still have the day, this afternoon, and this evening to evacuate. And you should evacuate if you're in evacuation order, especially if you're along the coastline, along where the highest surge is forecast. You just want to heed those evacuation orders. Storm surge is one of the top fatality-causing impacts of a hurricane in historical records. And you cannot underestimate the power of water, 10 to 15 feet. If you think about that, that's what we saw last year in Fort Myers and likely in Sanibel Island when Hurricane Ian came in. You saw the damage. I know a lot of you probably saw that footage from Fort Myers of that house being picked up as a 15-foot surge rolled into Fort Myers. That's what you can expect along the Big Bend region of Florida. Now, exactly where the center comes in will dictate who gets the peak storm surge. And you can see on the forecast cone, there is still a little bit of a range on where exactly the system comes in. And that's just going to be wobble watching with this hurricane. You can see that if it comes in a little bit further east, we might increase the storm surge risk for areas such as Clearwater and Tampa. If it comes in a little bit further west or on the current track forecast, we maximize the storm surge in areas like Cedar Key. And if you get it to come, up a bit, maybe further west, you could absolutely get some maximized storm surge in Apalachicola Bay and into Alligator Point, as you will get that onshore flow into that part of the coastline there. Now, it's also important to remember, this system is not only a coastal threat. This will carry threats well inland over the southeastern United States. This is the current probabilities of tropical storm force winds and the arrival time of that. Quick note, in Florida, tropical storm force winds will arrive tonight, or early tomorrow morning. So like I said, you still have time to evacuate, but the timing is running out here. And you can see as we get towards the southeast, tomorrow morning is when we're expecting some tropical storm force wind to expand into Georgia and South Carolina, and then later into Wednesday, we're expecting it to expand into North Carolina. Now, depending on exactly how much time this system sits offshore or onshore, that will dictate exactly how much tropical storm force winds we have, coming up towards North Carolina. If the system stays offshore, we would absolutely have a greater tropical storm force wind threat. We could see maybe some maintaining or re-strengthening of the system offshore. Rather, if the system comes ashore and stays onshore, the system would likely weaken quite a bit. It also depends, the storm surge depends on exactly how far from the coastline it is. If we have the storm coming further inland, then the storm surge would not likely be as bad. But if the system stays very close to the coastline, like it comes very close to Hilton Head or Charleston or Myrtle Beach, then you would have the maximized storm surge along these coastlines of South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina. Here's the current rainfall a forecast from the Weather Prediction Center. Note that no matter the track, this has a track generally still far onshore, but you could see the expanse of 6 to 10 inches of rain goes all the way into the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So that's going to be a significant threat here, and you can see the moderate risk of excessive rainfall along that general region with a slight risk surrounding that. And you can see as well the expanse of the hurricane and tropical storm force warnings. Now, keep in mind, with these graphics that you see from the National Hurricane Center, these will only note the hurricane and tropical storm warnings for the coastline. Go to weather.gov if you want to see exactly the expanse of the warnings. You can see the hurricane warning expands into southern Georgia, and you can see the tropical storm the tropical storm warning rather extends all the way up just up the coastline from Charleston, and the tropical storm watch goes into portions of North Carolina, and I'm sure, given enough time, those will be expanded upon into portions of the coastline of North Carolina as we go in time. And you can see that they are going towards the coastline. I think it's being buried underneath the flash flood potential. You can see that flash flood watch in effect because of the heavy rainfall we're expecting. Some of these watches and warnings will be overlapped, like the flood watch will take precedence over the tropical storm warning. So if you want to see exactly what's issued for your area, you can say, like, I want to go to Wilmington. You can click on the map and you can click onto Wilmington, and you can see all of the watches and warnings in place. And you can see, sorry, my voice seems to be going out a little bit here, but you can see the coastal flood warning in place and the flood watch in place. And you can see exactly the timing there and your percentage chance of rainfall. That's a lot to take in, but this is a potentially historic storm coming up for Florida, and a historic storm as well in the West Pacific for the Philippines. I will try to have another video out tomorrow before landfall. If not, I'll have another video after landfall of Idalia, and of course I'll have a video out for Saola as it goes towards China. And we'll also talk about our other system in the West Pacific that could impact Taiwan and Japan. But stay safe in the Philippines and China. Stay safe in the southeastern United States ahead of these storms, and hopefully the damage is not as bad as we anticipate ahead of these storms. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.